Hi, my name is Erica Harper. I built a company from scratch, funded it, named it, even designed the first product label on my kitchen table. I thought I was building a future for my family, but last year I got a text that said, "You're no longer needed." They pushed me out of the very business I created, not realizing I still owned every piece of it from the name to the formulas. If you've ever trusted the wrong people with your dreams, you're not alone. They say never mix family and business. I thought we were different until I built the business and they tried to erase me from it. When I left my role as a senior strategist at Cresswell Consulting, the decision wasn't impulsive. It was spring 2020 and the world had just begun limping out of lockdown. I was burnt out, drained from a career of suits, boardrooms, and manufactured urgency. But mostly, I was hungry to create something real, something mine. My grandmother's handwritten skincare recipes had lived in a dusty tin box for decades. Calendula salves, lavender scrubs, oat milk masks, remedies she used on our scraped knees and sunburns. During isolation, I found myself mixing them again in my condo kitchen. One part nostalgia, one part desperation to reconnect with something warm. That was the spark. Everkind wouldn't just be a product, it would be a return to purity, to purpose. I put together a small pitch deck and called a family meeting. It wasn't formal, just me barefoot in my tiny kitchen with a tray of sample bombs and laminated cost projections. My goal is to launch an ethical small batch skincare line, I explained. All organic, transparent sourcing, zero plastic. I'll fund the startup phase myself, about $250,000, but I want this to be a Harper legacy. Mom cried first. She always did. Dad pulled me into a hug that nearly cracked my ribs. "You're amazing, Erica. Just tell us how to help." Ronald nodded vaguely. "Sounds cool. I could maybe do something with, like, brand vibes. We rented a small studio downtown by May. It smelled like paint and industrial dust, but to me, it was full of possibility. I brought in Naomi to draft supplier contracts, handle local licensing, and, per her usual foresight, register all IP filings. "You need this in writing," she insisted, clicking through an early prototype of our logo. "Especially if your family's involved. Trust is great until profit shows up." I waved her off. "It's family, Naomi. We're in this together." She didn't argue, just jotted something in her leather-bound planner and underlined it twice. We called the brand Harper and Sage Naturals, my idea. Sage was Grandma's name. Everkind would be the flagship line, soothing, minimal, honest. Ronald insisted on being listed as brand experience lead. I asked what that meant. He shrugged. "You know, vibes, events, look and feel." He offered to manage the Instagram, then missed the first content meeting because he forgot it was Thursday. Still, I brushed it off. He was my brother. I could fill the gaps. The first launch event was small but beautiful, exposed brick wildflowers, lavender-infused drinks. Word had traveled fast, ethical beauty was hot, and a few micro-influencers even stopped by. Naomi circled the room with her ever-present notepad, checking off logistics. Mom handed out samples. Dad narrated the product stories like they were epic poems. Then she walked in Chloe Martin, auburn hair, linen jumpsuit, that unnerving calm that made everyone else feel overdressed and unsure. She wandered through like she already owned the space, picked up a bomb, tested it on her wrist, held it to the light like a jeweler. "These textures," she said, smiling at me. "You don't see formulation like this in startups. You're either very lucky or very, very good." "I had a good teacher," I said, glancing at the old photo of Grandma Sage on the display table. Chloe's eyes followed. "This could be huge, you know, with the right narrative." She leaned in, voice soft. "Have you considered rebranding for broader retail appeal?" I gave a polite laugh. "We're focused on staying boutique for now." For now," she echoed like a promise she planned to override. She drifted over to Ronald, touching his elbow in a way that felt too familiar too soon. That night, after we closed up, Ronald suggested we grab dinner. I was exhausted, but agreed. We went to a quiet spot near Lark Street where he ordered bourbon and didn't look at the menu. "You're kind of intense about all this," he said between bites of steak. "Maybe take a step back? Let the rest of us bring something fresh." I blinked. You mean, step back from my own company, I'm just saying. You're great at building things, but not everything needs to have your fingerprints on it. You hired Naomi Wright Trust people. Let go a little. I paid the bill. Later that night, as I sank into my couch still wearing the same launch day shoes, my phone buzzed. A new email. Subject: Future Vision Forever Kind. From Chloe Martin to Erica Harper, Cece, Ronald Briggs. Thank you for the opportunity to attend your lovely launch event. Ronald and I had some exciting ideas we wanted to share regarding the next evolution of the brand. Later that night, Erica receives a thank you email from Chloe, CCing Ronald. Subject: Future Vision Forever Kind. I thought investing money secured my place, but belonging doesn't come with a receipt. I still remember the scent I created for our very first product, Cypress Bergamot, and a trace of clove. It took me 6 weeks and 4 dozen test batches to get it right. That blend became our identity. The logo, too, I stayed up until 3 a.m. sketching variations on my iPad, tweaking fonts until the weight of the ampersand felt exactly balanced. No agency, no design team. Just me in sweatpants chasing something I couldn't yet name but already loved. Naomi sat across from me on the floor of my condo the week I filed our LLC. Register the scent profiles, file the logo, trademark the name under you personally, not the company, she said, handing me a folder. This is the formal paperwork. Just sign. I hesitated. If this is going to be a family thing, wouldn't it be better for transparency if the assets are under Harper and Sage directly? She exhaled slowly. You do realize that if your name isn't on the filings and the company turns its back on you, you'll have nothing but screenshots and memories. I trust them. Naomi didn't argue. She just tucked the folder into my bookshelf and said, let's call it your safety net, in case things shift. Now, nearly 2 years later, I sat at the long walnut conference table in our HQ's upstairs planning space, a converted loft with too many plants and too few working heaters. Chloe stood near the whiteboard gesturing at a mock-up on her tablet. I've been thinking about streamlining the packaging cleaner lines. Bolder fonts, maybe introduce monochrome palettes. The handwritten look is very craft fair. I stared at the screen. The new mock-up was sleek, yes. Also sterile. The warmth was gone. That handwriting is Grandma Sage's, I said. It's the emotional anchor of the brand. Customers tell us they feel comforted by it. You don't remove a heartbeat to modernize the body. Ronald shifted in his chair. You always do this. We bring ideas, you shoot them down with data or some emotional pitch. Innovation needs risk, Erica. This isn't risk, I replied. It's erasure. Margaret looked between us. Why don't we just try Chloe's version for the winter campaign? Just one run. It's good to test things. My breath caught. Margaret had never contradicted me outright in a meeting, not even in year 1. I looked at her, waiting for some flicker of doubt to cross her face. There was none. Just weariness and resignation. The discussion moved on, but I stopped hearing it. Chloe's voice became distant, like background noise in a bad dream. My hands clenched beneath the table. I reminded myself this is temporary. They're just experimenting. I still run the numbers. I still control operations. Later that evening, Naomi stopped by to drop off revised vendor contracts. She found me in my office, lights off, staring at the original Everkind packaging on the shelf. They're steamrolling you, she said without preamble. I looked at her, startled. You heard, I see enough to guess. Why are you letting this happen? I laughed softly, bitterly. Because if I push too hard, I become the problem. The rigid one. The one who can't let others grow. Naomi sat beside me. You didn't create this to be erased. You built it to belong. I thought they understood that. She reached for her old folder. Yes, the same one from my bookshelf, now yellowed at the corners. You still haven't signed. I didn't reply. The next day's meeting was meant to be routine. Quarterly growth analysis, supplier, transitions, digital outreach. But halfway through, Chloe pulled out a presentation titled Everkind Reimagined. There were color slides, new mood boards, a tagline I'd never approved, less rustic, more radiant. My throat dried as she clicked through slides referencing metrics I hadn't seen and quoting market trends from data I didn't recognize. Ronald beamed. Margaret nodded along, sipping her tea. And Douglas. He looked at me briefly, then away, like watching a car crash he couldn't stop. I kept my voice even. Why wasn't I included in this rebranding conversation? Chloe smiled. We didn't want to burden you. You've been so focused on back-end ops. I'm the founder, Ronald interjected. And we're evolving. You don't want to be the bottleneck, right? No one defended me. The silence was heavy. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I said nothing. I wouldn't give them a scene. Not yet. After they left, I stayed behind. I needed air clarity, anything that didn't taste like betrayal. Out of habit, I pulled up the company website on my phone. Maybe I just needed to see it. Something grounding. Something mine. But the homepage had changed. In the About Us section, under our team, there was a new profile. Chloe Martin, Brand Consultant. Strategic Growth. My stomach flipped. She was never hired in that role. Not officially. No contract, no announcement, no board approval. And yet there she was. Listed photographed, smiling beneath a tagline I hadn't written. Erica finds Chloe's name listed as Brand Consultant on the website's About Us page, uploaded without her knowledge. Betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles at you across a crowd. I was elbow deep in soap base when I got the text. Lovely event in Saratoga tonight. Your summer blossom line looks divine. Congrats on the rebrand. I stared at the screen, confused. I hadn't planned any event in Saratoga. The summer blossom release wasn't scheduled until mid-July, and even then we hadn't finalized packaging. I texted back, "What event?" No reply. Within an hour, a second message came through, this time with photos. A table draped in blush linens, Everkind gift bags arranged like wedding favors, and Chloe front and center holding up a new serum bottle under soft lighting. She was smiling, perfect posture framed by a banner I had never approved. It read, Everkind Purity Reimagined. I didn't ask permission. I just drove. The boutique wellness center in Saratoga Springs was the kind of place that offered meditation pods and probiotic cocktails. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in just as applause broke out in one of the side rooms. I followed the sound until it led me to a softly lit space with 50 or so attendees seated in neat rows of acrylic chairs. Chloe stood at the front, radiant in cream silk, one hand on a display table featuring our newest packaging I'd never seen before. Summer Blossom, she said, holding up the bottle, isn't just a seasonal shift. It's a signal of our evolution. Lighter, brighter, more confident. People nodded. Someone took notes. Ronald stood behind her, arms crossed, nodding like he'd been part of the planning from day one. I stood at the threshold, too stunned to move. And this scent, Chloe continued, was inspired by early mornings in Sage's garden, citrus dew, and meadow mint. A whisper of nostalgia, but with boldness at its core. That was my line. Those were my notes. Margaret and Douglas sat in the second row, dressed like proud parents at a recital. Neither had told me. Neither turned when I entered. A staff member noticed me loitering and offered a soft smile. Welcome, you must be here for Everkind. I nodded mutely. She handed me a gift bag. Here's your sample set and our founder's note. Inside the bag, tissue-wrapped products, a printed card, and a branded tag with a gold-stamped signature. Warmly, Chloe Martin, Everkind PR and Innovation. The room began to spin. Ronald clapped first. Let's hear it for Chloe. This is what bold looks like. The applause rippled around me. Chloe beamed hand to chest in feigned humility. Douglas adjusted his tie, but didn't look up. Margaret actually smiled. I turned to leave. My heels felt heavier with each step. I passed the hallway mirror and saw a reflection I barely recognized, shoulders hunched, lip trembling, eyes wild with disbelief. Outside, the summer air clung to my skin. The chirp of insects, the low murmur of jazz from a restaurant patio, the normalcy of everything around me felt obscene. I climbed into my car and sat in silence, hands trembling on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A new message. Thomas Morell. The formula's wrong. They're tweaking it, and it shows. I stared at the words. Thomas had been one of our earliest product testers. Detail-obsessed. Loyal. He wouldn't message lightly. Back at my apartment, I didn't bother changing out of my dress. I went straight to my laptop, opened the email Naomi had sent months ago. Subject line, IP protection draft. Urgent. I hadn't touched it. I clicked request review. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. That night, Erica opens Naomi's IP draft and clicks Request Review. I trusted my silence would be interpreted as grace. They took it as weakness. Naomi didn't speak as I laid the folder on her desk. A clean white binder, its plastic sleeves brimming with paper trails. Screenshots, invoices, sent formula iterations, logo drafts, and metadata timestamps going back to our first lotion batch. 107 files sorted by date and category, cross-linked in a cloud backup I'd curated obsessively since day one. She opened the folder and exhaled like a diver reaching the surface. You've been preparing for this longer than you realized. I didn't prepare. I just kept everything. She nodded, eyes skimming the contents. That instinct might have just saved your legacy. It was early August, and her office smelled faintly of citrus disinfectant and printer toner. A ceiling fan whirred above us, stirring a stack of legal pads on the shelf behind her. The silence between us wasn't cold, it was purposeful. We were building something. Not from scratch, but from the splinters of everything that had once felt solid. Naomi pulled out her laptop and started uploading the documentation to the USPTO database. You're filing under your name, not the company, she said, voice flat with certainty. Logos, taglines, incent structures, website code, you built them. You own them. We'll date the rights from the earliest provable use. That binder gives us leverage. Yeah, I nodded. My throat was dry, but I didn't speak. I couldn't trust my voice not to betray how much this cost me, not in money, but in grief. Meanwhile, Chloe was conducting her quiet surgery. That same week, I noticed my photo had disappeared from our website's banner, where once it had read, "Founded by Erica Harper," now it simply said, "A family brand reimagined." I wasn't notified. No email, no approval. Worse, staff meetings began shifting without warning. I showed up to Monday strategy only to find the lights off and a sticky note taped to the door. Moved to Zoom. Link emailed. I hadn't received one. That afternoon, I scrolled through the team's Slack feed. Ronald had posted photos from the rescheduled meeting, Chloe presenting a deck titled Brand Clarity 2.0 Staff, laughing at something I wasn't there to witness, and a boomerang of someone popping sparkling water cans like they'd won a championship. Ronald didn't even text me afterward. No apology. Just radio silence. At home, I turned on my monitor and stared at the login screen for our internal drive. Chloe had changed the background to her new color palette, icy lavender and bone white. Even the typography was different. Sharp. Corporate. It looked nothing like us. Nothing like me. I checked the site's footer. Our brand statement had been rewritten. Everkund was born from a desire to blend modern elegance with time-honored self-care. The sentence had no soul. It sounded like it had been churned out by an AI trained on hotel brochures. Later that evening, Naomi called. I had just poured tea but forgot to drink it. "It's done," she said. I didn't ask what she meant. I knew. The IP portfolio is now fully protected. Legally, they can't use a single asset without you. And if they try, we're ready. The words felt unreal. As though some invisible line had been drawn around my work, a circle of light after months of creeping shadows. I stood at the window watching the last of the summer sun slide behind a rooftop across the street. I thought I would feel vindicated, triumphant. But mostly I felt tired. That night I opened my inbox and found a message flagged as important. Subject, strategic meetings. Update from AmineHarperandSage.com to Erica Harper. Dear Erica, effective. Immediately, you are no longer required at Monday strategy meetings. Your insights will be appreciated via written summary reports submitted by Friday EOD each week. Thank you for your ongoing contributions. HNS Management Erica receives a formal notice she's no longer required at Monday strategy meetings. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I simply turned off the lights they never knew I controlled. It started with a bounce. The $2.100 monthly auto payment for the reservation software failed at midnight on October 23rd. The system tried again at 6:00 a.m. and failed again. By 8:00 a.m., the restaurant dashboard read, "Access restricted. Contact account owner." I didn't have to lift a finger. I had already revoked administrator access 3 days prior. Chloe never noticed. Ronald never asked. That same morning, the head of their outsourced marketing team called Chloe directly. Hi. Strange issue. Our license key for the email automation is showing as invalid. I tried reissuing the campaign for Friday's launch, but the backend templates are gone. Has something changed? Chloe, of course, had no idea. She emailed me at 9:17 a.m. with the subject line, urgent, backend access needed. No greeting, no apology. Just can you restore the email flow and reauthorize our Maildrift login? I'm locked out. I didn't respond. At 11:04 a.m., the cosmetics fulfillment warehouse called Naomi. We've halted the Everkind shipment, no confirmation from the listed authorized contact. It's been flagged as high risk. That contact was me. My name, my password, my verification ID. The dominoes fell quickly from there. Ronald showed up to the office in a fury. According to a former intern who still texted me occasional updates, he slammed a file folder onto the front desk and demanded someone fix the systems. When no one could, he blamed the new tech coordinator, who had joined barely 2 weeks earlier, for screwing everything up. Meanwhile, Chloe tried logging into the internal branding repository. It redirected her to a secure notice from Naomi's firm. Cease and desist unauthorized use of proprietary materials. Immediate suspension required. She forwarded it to Ronald with a note. What is this? He didn't reply. Naomi and I worked in tandem, her from her legal office, me from the familiar calm of my homework space. I wore soft cotton socks and sipped licorice tea. It felt strange to be dismantling something I had once built with love. Stranger still to feel no guilt. One by one, Naomi sent cease and desist notices to all third-party distributors and digital vendors. She was thorough, calm, ruthless. With every email she forwarded me, I felt something loosen inside my chest. Not satisfaction, just certainty. I wasn't being vindictive. I was ending something that had already ended. The office staff grew disoriented. An operations assistant posted in Slack, "Why aren't we getting the usual weekly performance dashboards?" Another chimed in, "Who's handling customer service? Ticket queue is blowing up." No one had answers, because I had been the answer. Not anymore. By Wednesday, internal chaos was spilling into public view. The Everkind Instagram page went silent. Their website crashed temporarily when a plugin failed to auto-update. Several loyal customers emailed the contact form asking if the brand had been sold. It doesn't feel like the same company anymore. It wasn't. That night, I lit a candle. Cedar and blood orange, an early test scent we never released, but one I always loved. I turned off my phone. I read a few pages from a novel I'd abandoned months earlier. For the first time in over 2 years, I went to bed before midnight. At 2:14 a.m., my voicemail caught a message. Ronald. Breath short, voice raw. What the hell did you do? Erica receives a voicemail from Ronald. What the hell did you do? Power doesn't just vanish. It leaks slowly through cracks they never thought to seal. On the morning of November 2nd, a Reddit thread popped up under RAR Indie Beauty Everkind. Feels off. Anyone else? The post included side-by-side photos of an older Summer Blossom bottle and the newly released version. The lighting was different, the texture looked thinner, and a few sharp-eyed users noted that the ingredients list had subtly changed. "I've been using their toner for 2 years," one comment read. "The new formula stings. It never used to." Another chimed in. "Same here. I thought it was just me." By noon, the thread had over 400 upvotes and dozens of comments, many from longtime customers sharing similar experiences. One user claimed the packaging started peeling after a week. Another posted a screenshot of an unanswered support ticket. The chorus was growing louder. Something was wrong at Everkind. I watched in silence as the conversation snowballed. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. At 3:17 p.m., I received an encrypted email from Naomi. Subject: heads up. This is gaining traction. Attached screenshots from customer forums, a scan of a memo that had leaked onto Twitter dated September 10th, marked confidential, authored by Chloe. The memo outlined a cost-saving reformulation of key products, citing vague terms like modern palettes and scalability. By 5:00 p.m., one of our major distributors emailed Chloe, "Hi, given the current customer sentiment online and lack of clarity around formulation changes, we're pausing the Q4 reorder until this stabilizes. Please advise." Chloe didn't advise. She panicked. That night, she posted a comment under Everkind's official blog entry. Unfortunately, Erica Harper is no longer involved in brand operations and has chosen to disrupt Everkind's systems at a sensitive time. We remain committed to quality and innovation. It was vague enough to avoid full-on libel, but sharp enough to leave a stain. Ronald reposted it on his LinkedIn with the caption, "Change is hard but necessary." The spin had started. I took screenshots of everything. Naomi called 2 hours later. She made it public. I saw, I said. Let her run with it. We've got leverage now. She added, and it's growing. The next morning, my inbox pinged. From Thomas Morell. Subject. For your records attached was a signed affidavit, clean formal notarized. The subject line read, Unauthorized formula alterations and vendor misrepresentation. Chloe Martin. Thomas had laid everything out, dates, conversations, internal emails, batch logs. He confirmed Chloe had unilaterally modified the original recipes without proper testing, presented them to vendors as upgrades, and instructed staff to downplay customer complaints as resistance to change. At the bottom of the document was one final sentence: I came to Everkind because of Erica Harper's vision. What's happening now betrays that entirely. I forwarded it to Naomi without comment. She replied within 5 minutes. Naomi, ready to send this to the board. Naomi, ready to send this to the board. They thought removing me would bring stability. Instead, the house they built on stolen ground began to sink. The email came in at 10:06 a.m. on a windy Thursday morning. Subject: Harper and Sage. Status clarification from Global Botanicals Limited. We regret to inform you that due to unresolved questions surrounding IP ownership and formulation consistency, we are terminating our vendor relationship with Harper and Sage effective immediately. No apology, no opening pleasantries, just termination. By noon, 2 more mid-tier retailers followed suit. The language was different, more polite, less direct, but the message was the same. You're too toxic to touch. Ronald held an emergency executive meeting that afternoon. Or tried to. According to an anonymous staffer's email that somehow made its way to Naomi's inbox, the conference room was half full. The CTO had already submitted his resignation. The marketing coordinator was homesick. Possibly for real? Possibly not. Chloe hadn't shown up. At 3:41 p.m., she finally appeared on email. Subject: role transition. From Chloe Martin to all stakeholders. I'm writing to share that my consulting engagement with Harper and Sage has concluded. I'm grateful for the opportunity to support the brand's evolution and wish the team continued success. For all PR inquiries, please contact. She even added a quote at the bottom of her signature: growth means knowing when to let go. There was no mention of Ronald, no joint decision, no accountability, just a vapor trail and a neatly folded parachute. Ronald replied once, short-clipped, sent BCC only to the board. Effective immediately, Chloe Martin is no longer affiliated with Harper and Sage. Naomi read it aloud to me over Zoom. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She timed it perfectly, I said. She always does, Naomi replied. But she left something behind. What liability? The moment she stepped into operations, knowingly used assets you created and misrepresented origin, she opened herself up. I'm sending a notice, but Ronald's name is the one on every payment. She gets to walk. He gets to pay. Outside my window, autumn wind whipped the trees bare. A week ago, they were still gold and red. Now nothing. Naomi forwarded me the final cease and desist packet. 63 pages. Each vendor, distributor, design firm, and supplier who'd handled Everkind materials after the date of legal protection now had 14 days to either cease use or face formal litigation. The subject line was blunt: notice of enforcement. IP portfolio, Erica Harper. No need for flair. By 5:30 p.m., Ronald had tried calling Naomi 4 times. She declined them all. Then at 6:12 p.m., my phone rang. Not Ronald. Douglas. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I hadn't spoken to my father in nearly a year. I answered. There was a pause, then. Can we talk? Not as your father, but as the company's founder. Douglas calls Erica. Can we talk not as your father, but as the company's founder? He wanted a solution. I wanted an apology. We both left disappointed. The call came at 9:02 a.m. I was sitting in my kitchen cradling a lukewarm mug of chamomile tea, staring out the window at the brittle light of mid-November. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me wanted to hear his voice again, if only to know what it sounded like when everything cracked. "Hi, sweetheart." Douglas said, his voice rough like he hadn't slept. "I'm not your sweetheart right now," I replied calmly. "Let's just speak plainly." A beat of silence. Then, as if rehearsed, he began. "We need you, Erica. Harper and Sage. It's unraveling. Ronald can't keep up, Chloe's gone, and vendors are threatening legal action. We didn't realize how much of the core, how much of everything was yours." "No," I said. "You realized. You just chose not to acknowledge it." His sigh was long, brittle. "I'm not calling to fight," he said. "I'm calling to fix things." "That's the thing, Dad. You're not calling as my father. You're calling as the founder, hoping I'll be your fixer again." He didn't deny it. I let the silence stretch, then spoke evenly. "Let's walk through this since no one bothered before. I created the scent profiles. I coded the first version of the website. I negotiated every early supplier contract, funded the initial $250,000, hired the staff, and set up the IP framework that now protects every formula, every logo, every word on the packaging." His voice was small now. "I know. And yet," I continued, "you let them tell the world I was disruptive. That I walked away. That I wasn't part of the evolution." "It got out of hand," he murmured. "We let Ronald handle too much, and Chloe, she was persuasive. She made us believe things would be smoother without conflict." "You mean without questions," I corrected. He tried a softer tone. "You always wanted this to be a family legacy. We were just trying to preserve it." "Then you should have preserved me." Another long pause. Then he shifted gears, emotion the fallback currency. "This company still has a chance, Erica. You built something people care about. Something that matters. Isn't that worth saving together?" I felt something twist in my chest, but I held steady. "I'm not looking to punish you, Dad, but I won't hand over the keys again either." "What are you proposing?" "Temporary licensing of the IP," I said. 3 months. Limited scope. During which an independent auditor reviews all financials and operations. Legal restructuring must follow. No Ronald. No manipulation. And everything is in writing." There was a silence then, a shift, less surprise than disappointment. "That sounds more like punishment than partnership." "Then you're not ready for either." I ended the call. My tea had gone cold again, but I didn't feel the need to reheat it. I sat in stillness, watching the wind shake the brittle branches of the dogwood tree outside. At 4:43 p.m., the doorman buzzed. A courier envelope. No return address. Inside, a folded letter written in a hand I knew by heart. "My dearest Erica." Erica receives a letter handwritten from her mother. Before, they assumed I'd always bend. This time, I came with contracts. The conference room at Naomi's office was glass-walled and cold, with a long table that felt too pristine for what was about to happen. I took my seat at one end, Naomi beside me, a black leather binder closed in front of her. She didn't need to open it yet. Everything we were going to say had already been rehearsed, line by line, clause by clause. Across from us sat my parents and Ronald. Douglas wore a suit that didn't fit as well as it used to. Margaret clutched a legal pad she hadn't written a word on. Ronald sat with his arms crossed, face turned slightly away, as if the whole thing were a formality too tedious for his attention. Naomi cleared her throat. Calm, composed, lethal. "We're here to finalize the temporary IP licensing agreement between Erica Harper and Sage Naturals. The license grants limited, non-exclusive use of the IP portfolio for 90 days with strict compliance terms and oversight provisions." She opened the binder. Pages slid across the table. Clause 2.1, she continued, establishes a 5% gross revenue royalty paid monthly beginning December 15th. Clause 3.4 mandates a full financial audit by an independent third party before renewal is considered. And Clause 5.2, breach consequences, states plainly any violation terminates the license without appeal. Douglas began to nod, slowly, brows knit with effort. Margaret looked to him for guidance. He didn't meet her gaze. Ronald scoffed. "So you get paid whether we succeed or not." I looked him directly in the eye for the first time in months. "You used my formulas, my name, my systems, without permission, and you almost destroyed everything in the process. I'm not profiting off your failure. I'm protecting what's mine." Naomi didn't flinch. The terms are non-negotiable. Ronald leaned back in his chair, lips tight. You think locking us into this is redemption? No, I said. Redemption is your responsibility. This is insurance. Douglas took the pen first. His hand trembled slightly as he signed. He didn't look at me, but his voice was low. Thank you for offering a way back. Margaret signed next. Her pen hovered for a moment before touching the paper. Her eyes, when they met mine, were wet. I said nothing. Then it was Ronald's turn. He took the longest. At one point, he looked like he might get up and walk out, but Naomi simply folded her hands and waited. He finally signed, not looking at anyone. The scratch of his signature was louder than it should have been. Naomi stamped the final page. The sound echoed. I stood smoothing my blazer. This time I said, voice, even you work under my name, not behind my back. Erica, this time you work under my name, not behind my back. They came asking for closure. I came demanding accountability. The therapy office was painted in neutral tones, muted beige walls, soft gray carpet, and light that fell gently from a frosted skylight. Everything about the space seemed engineered to absorb tension. But nothing in that room could soften what we had come to say. We sat in a circle. 4 chairs, 1 box of tissues already open. Dr. Helen Strauss, a woman with kind eyes and a spine of steel, opened the session with practiced authority. No interruptions. Speak from your own experience. And remember, this is not a courtroom. It's a space for truth. No one said anything for a full minute. Then I spoke first. When you excluded me from that dinner, when you chose Chloe's comfort over my presence, it didn't just hurt. It erased me. From the company I built. From the family I thought I belonged to. Margaret's hands trembled. She clutched the edge of her scarf like it was a lifeline. I didn't know it would go that far, she whispered. I thought it was temporary, that things would calm down. Dr. Strauss turned to her gently. And why didn't you ask Erica directly? Because Ronald was finally doing something he believed in, Margaret said, and I didn't want to take that away from him. Douglas sat forward, hands clasped tightly. I thought silence would keep the peace, he muttered. I didn't defend you because I didn't want to start another fight. And I told myself you were strong enough to handle it. That's the thing, I replied. You expected me to be strong enough to endure betrayal, but not important enough to protect. Ronald hadn't spoken. Not once. Dr. Strauss finally turned to him. Ronald, you've heard a lot. Do you have anything to say? He exhaled through his nose. Then I wanted something that was mine, he said. For once. I was tired of being your shadow, Erica. Of people comparing us. Of hearing how perfect you were. His voice was tight-clipped. I thought if I could steer Everkind into something new, something better, I'd finally matter. Chloe told me you'd never share real control, that you'd always treat us like employees. I sat still, letting his words settle. You didn't just take my seat at the table, I said. You tried to burn the table down and build a new one in my image without me. Dr. Strauss leaned in, her voice firm. Can we all admit that Erica wasn't just excluded? She was erased silence. Then Douglas' eyes damp nodded. Yes, he said. We did that. Margaret nodded, 2 tears spilling freely now. I didn't stop it, and that makes me complicit. Ronald looked away, then muttered, Yeah, we erased you. I took a breath. This isn't forgiveness, I said quietly. This is acknowledgement. Forgiveness is still a decision away. Erica. This isn't forgiveness. This is acknowledgement. Forgiveness is still a decision away. Truth doesn't just live in stories. It lives in spreadsheets, signatures, and silence. The Harper and Sage boardroom had been rearranged for the special review. The usual centerpiece, a vase of dried lavender, was gone. In its place sat a black box file with silver tabs, each labeled by date and category. Naomi opened the meeting. Thank you all for attending. Per Clause 3.4 of the licensing agreement, today's presentation covers the full documentation of Ms. Erica Harper's intellectual and operational contributions to Harper and Sage Naturals. She stood with ease, commanding the room like a trial lawyer, though no judge was present. On the wall behind her, a screen flickered to life, displaying a clean slide with 6 words. Foundation's formulas, filings, financials, fraud, fallout. Douglas sat to the side eyes on the table. Margaret wrung a tissue in her lap. Ronald had taken the far corner seat, arms crossed, mouth tight. The board members, 5 in total, looked politely bored at first. That would change. Naomi began, her voice even and methodical. Here is the first receipt dated March 14th, 2020. Initial equipment purchases paid directly by Erica Harper. The next ingredient contract signed by her with botanical suppliers. Design drafts from her laptop timestamped. Email threads with early testers. A full version history of the brand story crafted by her line by line. Click, click, click. Each slide landed with quiet weight. Then came the trademarks. All filed under Erica's legal counsel, stamped by the USPTO, protected, valid. One board member leaned forward. And these weren't listed in our original filings because… Naomi didn't answer. Instead, she pressed play on a video clip. Thomas Morell, former product tester, appeared on screen in a deposition setting. In October 2022, I noticed the lavender calm balm smelled different. After checking the batch logs, I realized the formula had been altered. Chloe approved a substitute oil to cut costs. It wasn't authorized by Erica. I raised concerns and was ignored. Chloe said, and I quote, "She's gone now. This is our brand." Gasps were audible. Erica spoke for the first time. "You asked why my name wasn't in the filings. He didn't forget," she said, gesturing toward Ronald. He erased. Ronald's chair creaked. "We were evolving the brand," he said, "trying to modernize." "You were cutting corners," Naomi said coolly. "And misrepresenting origin." Another board member raised her hand. "Mr. Briggs, did you know these trademarks belong to Erica?" Ronald hesitated. "I didn't think that's clear," someone murmured. Naomi closed her folder. "We request that the board vote to amend all corporate documentation to list Erica Harper as founding creator and to include her authorship and IP ownership across all brand materials moving forward." It wasn't a demand, it was a correction. The vote was unanimous. No one looked at Ronald when it was done. As I stood to leave Heartsteady, a soft voice stopped me near the hallway. She couldn't have been older than 22 with a clipboard tucked under her arm. "Ms. Harper," she said, cheeks pink. "I just wanted to say, I joined this company because of your blog post from 3 years ago about starting something of your own. You were the reason I believed women could lead." As Erica walks out, a young intern stops her. "I joined because of your blog from 3 years ago. You were the reason I believed women could lead. They offered what I once begged for, but I no longer needed it." The rooftop cafe overlooked Albany's frozen skyline, a few string lights blinking weakly against the dusk. It was cold enough that I kept my coat on, but the wind was still. Everything in the air felt suspended, like the moment before a snowflake touches ground. Douglas had chosen the place. He said it had good soup. They were already seated when I arrived. Margaret looked up first, flashing a smile, too eager to be casual. Ronald was there too, unexpectedly seated slightly apart, nursing a cup of untouched tea. I sat. The silence stretched just long enough to be uncomfortable. Douglas finally cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming." "I was curious," I said, folding my gloves. He glanced at Margaret, then back at me. "We want you back. As CEO. No fanfare. Just that. Flat on the table like a card played too late." I blinked once. "Why now?" Margaret leaned in, voice gentle. "Because we need you." Douglas nodded. "The brand. It's got your fingerprints everywhere. And your absence, honestly, it's louder than your voice ever was." I looked at them. Really looked. Not with anger, not even sadness. Just clarity. I asked for a seat. "You handed me a folded chair," I said, then took even that away. Ronald looked down. Douglas opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "You don't get to call me back when it's convenient," I said. "Leadership isn't a spare key." They didn't argue. I stood buttoning my coat slowly. "I'm building something new," I added, not out of spite, but because I finally remembered who I was before I tried to belong to something that didn't want me. Margaret looked like she might cry. I offered her a soft smile, not warm, not cruel. Just a goodbye, in disguise. Back home, I kicked off my boots and opened my laptop out of habit. A single new email sat at the top of my inbox, flagged as urgent. Subject: Everkind Origins. Global expansion inquiry. From Ardent Botanics. Back at home, Erica receives an email. We'd like to fund Everkind Origins globally, Ardent Botanics. They tried to erase me from the brand, so I made myself the brand. The camera light blinked red live. I sat in front of a simple linen backdrop, a single glass jar of salve beside me. No graphics, no music, just my voice, my name, and my story. I walked away from something I built because I realized I wasn't welcome in the house I constructed. So I built a new one brick by brick this time, with doors that open for those who know their worth. The chat exploded in hearts and fire emojis. Naomi monitored from off-screen, nodding in quiet approval. Thomas handled inventory updates in real time, calling out numbers behind the camera. Everkind Origins, I said, isn't just a brand. It's a boundary. It's what happens when you decide you don't need to beg for a seat, you build your own table. The product line rolled out on screen as I spoke. No celebrity endorsements, no gimmicks, just formulas that honored their origins. Lavender Calm Balm, Rest and Rise, Facial Serum, Elderflower Night Cream, all made with the exact recipes they once tried to tweak into oblivion. Within the first 3 hours, 800 units sold. By the next morning, they were gone, 1,000 orders filled. Site traffic crashed the server twice. We laughed. We reloaded. Thomas messaged me from the studio floor. Let's talk spa collab. Boutique only. Quiet luxury. I grinned. 2 hours later, an article trended on LinkedIn, The Woman Who Reclaimed Her Company Without Ever Returning. Underneath, a comment from a stranger read, "Thank you for showing me self-respect isn't negotiable." That comment hit harder than the sales stats ever could. I took a walk after dinner, scarf tucked against the chill. Albany's winter air held the kind of sharpness that made every breath feel earned. I hadn't walked past the old Harper and Sage storefront in months. But tonight, something pulled me. The windows were covered in butcher paper. Renovations, clearly. A new sign had been etched into the glass, founded by Erica Harper. I stood there long enough to read it once, not twice. Then I turned and kept walking. Erica walks past Harper and Sage's storefront, now half renovated, with her name finally on the wall. She keeps walking. I kept every receipt, for proof, for protection, for pride. Now I don't need any of them. Outside, snow fell in soft spirals, blanketing Albany in quiet. My new apartment overlooked the park, a far cry from the studio where Everkind was born, or the boardroom where they tried to erase me. Tonight, the only sound was the hum of the radiator and the soft crackle of old paper. I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by notebooks, some filled with scent ratios and branding drafts, others just scribbled half-thoughts. One bore a faded coffee stain from the night I stayed up deciding between two logos. I smiled and closed it. My laptop screen glowed beside me. Folder after folder, I clicked and deleted old formulas, H&S drafts, Chloe docs. The files didn't fight back. They just vanished. The screen pinged. A video call request from Naomi. I answered, and her face lit up the room. "It's done," she said, raising a glass of something golden. "Everkind Origins is officially, legally, and irrevocably yours." I lifted my mug of tea. To starting over. Without begging. Naomi grinned. To building from respect, not desperation. We clinked through the screen and let silence say the rest. A small box sat on the windowsill. I opened it. Inside, nestled in tissue, was a test jar from Thomas, his handwriting on a card, "Grandmother's Kitchen. Batch number 1. I twisted off the lid and inhaled. Lemon balm, beeswax, lavender, the same calming scent I'd mixed by instinct, memory, and longing. It smelled like trust. I sat at my desk, opened my blog for what I knew would be the final entry, and typed, "Sometimes justice doesn't arrive as applause. Sometimes it's just peace. Quiet. Full. Mine." I hit publish. The apartment exhaled with me. As I folded away the last receipt, I'd kept an old printout of our original Everkind logo. I heard the knock. At the door was a plain package. No return address. Inside, carefully wrapped, was the very first Calm Balm ever produced under Harper and Sage. Still in its original jar. Still bearing the label I designed, though aged now, corners curling. Tied around it, a handwritten tag. "We remember." A package arrives at the door. Inside Harper and Sage's first product handwritten tag, "We Remember." She didn't walk back into Harper and Sage for revenge, she walked away from it intact. What was once taken from her voice power name was reclaimed not by force but by truth made undeniable. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and arrives in the form of someone who no longer needs to be invited in to know her own worth. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Because, in the end, no wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story struck a chord with you, like, share, and comment below. Type 1 if you felt her victory in your bones. Type 2 if you're still waiting for a justice of your own.